restore freedom, restore the Constitution. That's what I'm going up there to do and fight for peacefully. And next to his visiting 7 altars a day, which are complaining with God for being a pestilent tyrant, I say his only employment besides this is devout and impudent mockery of God. So notice how the left definitely mocks God and has been mocking God for a long time. Why? God would give you a higher law than even the Constitution, right? And if you're serving God, you're less easy to control. You have a higher purpose. So government, particularly tyrants and totalitarians, don't want God or guns, free speech or association. Those stand in the way of what? Power, control, more money. They always want more, tyrants and totalitarians. Still sit contriving with his faithful ministry, which of his subject may probably be worth 100 pounds, and how to cheat him or rob him of the 100 pounds. Well, how much of this is going on? Robbing and cheating from Washington right now, today. Same Grand Prince has now scarce any other business for his soldiers but that of employing them directly against his own people. So once he gets into a certain state with no courts, you just become military dictatorship, and you have to use the soldiers against your people. If you like this video, like, share. If you believe in fellowship, pass it around, share it. Thank you. Nor are they fit for any other employment, for one English regiment would be 7 of his. So they're also below mediocrity, right? You turn into mediocrity. So that his paltry forces, many of them are placed upon his frontiers, not to defend him from invasion, a task, and this is great, a task which they're not equal to, but to keep his wretched subjects from running away from famine in his government, right? You got to keep troops to keep people in now. A relief which is, however, barbarously denied by them by that old polite tyrant. They must stay and perish under him. I think this is important to keep reading it. I think it's an important document to know. Nor will he suffer them to seek elsewhere that support of life. So tyrants and totalitarians then have to keep you in. And remember, East Germany had to keep you in. So if you read the history of that, and those empires, they didn't want, China had a wall. They don't like people leaving, right? Now, the Great Wall of China was also supposed to keep people out, really. But anyway, it was really made to protect. They must stay and perish under him, nor will he suffer them to seek elsewhere that support of life, which his diabolical government deprives them at home, as if when he had robbed them of their labor and their life, he also wanted their skins. Powerful, right? Powerful writing. There's not upon earth a nation which having had unaccountable magistrates. Now look, unaccountable magistrates, and we've got that right now. Who has been punished for COVID, for all the mistakes? Who's been punished in Congress for going well beyond the budget and deficits every year? Who's been found out what's going on with election integrity in all the states? What about the IRS when they went through that problem? What about all these agencies with all their problems? The feds with the problems with the school moms, Catholics, the Christians. Power displayed, but who's losing a pension and being fired, and what's the accountability to not following the Constitution? When the Attorney General of the United States who makes a case against the Constitution, what's the penalty? What's the punishment? Well, you have to come up with communities and build systems to replace and take local areas over peacefully through elections and push back constitutionally, legally, constitutionally. There's not upon earth a nation which having had unaccountable magistrates has not felt them to have been crying and consuming mischiefs in truth, where they are most limited, has often as much as a whole people could do to restrain them to their trust and to keep them from violence, and such frequently has been their propensity to be lawless, nothing but violence and sometimes nothing but, this is the guy, not me, but a violent death could cure them of their violence. So look, we want to peacefully defend the Constitution. He's talking to this here. This evil has its root in human nature. Men will never think they have enough. That's a great line. Men will never think they have enough. So there's certain people, not Patrick Henry, not George Washington, not some of the great founders, who just want more always. And you've seen it. They just want all the power, all the things. These elected, some of them. Whilst they can take more, nor be content with a part when they can seize the whole. Look at the globalists. They want it all, right? And they want to redistribute what you have. They don't want America to be number one. And that's why it's up to you and us to protect America, American sovereignty. We should be looking out for whom? Americans. We are indeed told of some absolute princes who have been very good men and no oppressors. But the nature of their power rendered their good qualities almost useless and gave others an opportunity of doing their name, authority, mischiefs which they themselves abhorred. Now look, you can have good men come in and out, but you still want a constitution, right? Because a bad man may follow that good man. So you don't change it for a good man because you trust him. You keep that constitution. But the nature of their power rendered their good qualities almost useless and gave to others an opportunity of doing so, which besides themselves abhorred, beside any series of arbitrary princes upon earth, scarce out of 10 can one be named who was tolerable. There you go. Mao certainly wasn't. Stalin wasn't, right? Hitler. Even to prove himself an inhuman tyrant. How many bad tyrants have we had in history, or suffered his ministers to be so? And when an absolute prince has had great parts, they generally went to his grave with him and scarce ever proved hereditary. So in truth, the children of great princes have almost always proved to be very, very unlike them. So if you had a good ruler, usually he's saying that the children of these great princes, the children maybe of the bureaucrats today, the senators today, he's saying may not be like them anyway. I own the first line of the line has sometimes acted plausibly and gained by doing so dangerous credit and popularity. So, right, if your father's been the president of the United States or U.S. senator, you've gained that popularity if the guy's been good. You get that name and you can run, you can do well, right? Because today in America, fame means a lot. Status means a lot to people. There were people that in Texas, I'll tell you a little story. When I was reading one of the books on the Bush election, some of the people in Texas thought they were voting for the father, George Bush, when George Bush Jr. ran for president. They were polled after. So name means a lot. That's the point. Status means a lot. So that Bush name carried a lot. So here he's talking about the children will probably be, the crocodile's egg does no mischief whilst it's an egg, but out of it's hatched a crocodile, and by it the cursed race of destroyers is continued. The most plausible slavery is attended with this eternal misfortune that it has no choice of a master, but must accept of a master, such as chance sends. If Julius Caesar and Augustus had really been gods, and here's the thing about the Roman Empire, there's a video going around, this is funny, we won't put that in here, why men think about the Roman Empire or something like that. But anyway, Julius Caesar, here's one reason. Maybe we'll do a separate video. Julius and Caesar and Augustus, we don't want to fall like the Roman Empire. If Julius and the founders had looked at the Roman Empire too, they had studied it, right? They wanted to do a republic and didn't trust democracies and didn't trust the mob. Julius Caesar and Augustus had really, and they didn't trust dictators. They didn't want a dictator, an emperor. If Julius Caesar and Augustus had been really gods, as their flatterers made them, yet they're leaving behind such a race of successors, entitles them to the characters of detestable tyrants to eternity. Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero were the precious and bloody blessings which these beneficent princes left, names universally abhorred, whilst those of Caesar and Augustus are generally adored. Why are they adored? And yet to Caesar and Augustus were mankind indebted for these pests of mankind, nor were there so great pests as were Caesar and Augustus, who did much more mischief and destroyed the world more than either Nero or Caligula. It's it right? That's interesting, right? Because it's true. Nero and Caligula were awful, but Caesar and Augustus went to war. Besides leaving them to destroy it further, people rarely think of this, but it's literally to what? Will some say the generous Caesar and the mild Augustus do more mischief than the wild Caligula and the savage Nero? Yes, 50-1. Nero destroyed his 20s. Caesar and Augustus, their 20,000s that for Nero. And this is interesting, I think. We may think Julius and Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero took Rome chiefly for the scene of their cruelty and destroyed many and great good men, sometimes out of wantonness and out of journey. But Caesar and Augustus made Rome and the world their slaughterhouse, right? So they went to war and killed many, many. And they destroyed more great men than the other four. So this is rather, I wanted to give you the whole letter. We'll see if we get through it. I think it's interesting and fascinating. So true today. These are happening today, right? You can move to complete tyrant into complete totalitarianism rapidly. You can move into complete rule under a tyrant or rule under totalitarianism, slipping away gradually, incrementally. Remember when he said that? And we've done that through history and major. We've done major structural changes to the United States, and we've done incrementally. The left has been good at incremental and large changes of moving away from our Constitution and more toward tyranny. You move away from the Constitution, move toward tyranny. You move away from states' rights and the 10th Amendment, you move toward tyranny. You let the federal government keep encroaching on the states and the people and gaining more power, you move to tyranny. Think of how powerful and large the federal government is now. And to public rapine and general depopulation, they exceeded them further. Indeed, as to heroic and diffusive mischief and villainy, the difference between them was as great as between Jack Straw and a late grand monarch. The truth is, Caesar and Augustus had art and great qualities, which as far as from exercising the evils which they did it, but wanting their great qualities took the road to hatred. So an unrestrained power, here's the point, an unrestrained power in one man or in a few, an oligarchy overall, is such an extravagant deviation from what? Reason and nature. We need thinking men. We talk about that a lot. Which feasters and endowments different from the men should have a lasting right from his blood or his pride, and to rule, kill, starve. Oh, so here's a tyrant. What is a tyrant? Domineer over his men, rule, kill, starve, famish, banish, imprison. The power is indeed so monstrous, and here we go, that it turns men that have it into monsters. So you give a man unlimited power, no constitution, no restraints. He's saying they'll turn into monsters. And who will pay you with your freedom? You'll be told what to do, where to go, where to live, or be put in a ditch, right? An unexceptional man upon earth is not to be trusted with it. Men change with their stations, and power of sort rarely alters them for the better, but on the contrary has often turned a very good man into very bad. It shows that men forbear evil chiefly to avoid the ill consequence of it themselves and for one of opportunity and protection. Finding both in power, they prove by making use of them that their virtue was only what? Self-love. Christ had what? Sacrifice. Patrick Henry had what? Sacrifice. George Washington had what? Sacrifice. But these guys, their virtue was only self-love. You got a lot of guys like this, it seems like, in Washington right now, right? Don't deal with the deficits. Don't deal with the budget. Got an open border. Thus, men of the best and brightest characters have often done the most mischief, and by well serving their country have enabled to destroy it. And they were good and evil from one in the same motive, a passion for themselves and their own security or glory. Well, we always talk about having a larger purpose beside yourself and restoring men in history. Don't just be about yourself. Be about your country, love your country, be about your friends, your family, your community, not just yourself. And they were good and evil from one in the same motive, a passion for themselves. So you've seen that. You've seen the bold answers and the arrogance of some of these bureaucrats talking back to Washington. And the arrogance shows and manifests itself to you of how they believe they should be over you and in power. And what would they do with even more power if there was no constitution and not really any check? And they go pretty far already. Can you imagine if there was no constitution, no courts, just a military behind them? What would it be like today for you? Imagine, sit there. There were no courts to go to, no judges, not a, Congress, just one dictator with his army. What would that be like? You already see less rule of law and problems with the Constitution. And you already see a level of tyranny right now that we need to peacefully stand up against. Thus, the House, being a very good commonwealth and serving, obliging almost every family first, gained credit enough by their generous behavior to enslave the great and powerful city. Okay, Pericles administered the government of Athens with great, okay, here's a good point, with great sufficiency. But he broke down the fences of its liberty. Here's what you don't want. This is a good point. And people ask me this a lot. And ruled arbitrarily all his days. Look, I'll always say, somebody will say, hey, as Republicans, when we get power, we can do this. It's like, that's unconstitutional. We want a constitution. So just because we like something or want it, I don't want to push from the federal government. You do that in your state. There's a lot of times I'm asked this. Should we do this or that? No, that's not a federal. That was not enumerated for the federal government. So when I'm really for the Constitution and the Republic. So anyway, when the Republicans or Democrats, whichever party, take power, We would hope that both would be constitutional, but we know that many of them aren't at all and don't care about it. But anyway, were we to be up there, we would want to push the Constitution and restore it. Pericles administered the government of Athens with great sufficiency. He broke down the fences and ruled. So what you don't want, you always want to stay with the Constitution, not because it's getting your ideal across or because it's, oh, this guy's a good guy, so let's let him do this. No, you want to stay within the constitutional boundaries. Having defended their sins against enemies, he afterwards showed himself their greatest by killing and one of the great masters. Chief, okay, I think the point here, and we can get it. And here's another guy, Pompey and Caesar were great and excellent commanders. I like the Roman history because the founders had studied the Roman history. But they made all the fruits of their victories their own. And from being very good soldiers, they made themselves most pernicious and arbitrary magistrates. That's what we don't want, right? We want rule of law written, be seen. You can read it, you can see it, not arbitrary. Well, today you're bad, you're good, you did the same thing. Arbitrary. You don't know what the law is going to be tomorrow because it's whatever mood they're in. Or your politics could punish you. Now, all these great men derived from the good, which they did, a capacity to do much more evil. So that as a power is to do good does naturally include an opportunity of doing much evil. Okay, I think we got this. I think this is enough, isn't it? Let's go on. Now listen, this is important. That people does naturally include it as an opportunity. So those who are in possession of power ought above all men, and this is important, to be narrowly watched. In other words, and checked with restraints, Jeff, stronger than their temptations to break them. So to be narrowly watched and checked with restraints stronger than their temptations to break them. So whose responsibility is it to restrain and watch? It's yours, it's ours, it's mine. We have to watch these magistrates, these elected representatives, and hold them accountable. If no one holds them accountable, they can keep going. Checked with restraint, stronger than the temptations. So who's the restraint? The state governments on the federal government. You, the people, on the state governments. And it's up to us if we want to have freedom. Break them and every crimes. And every crime of theirs ought to be more penal, as it is evidently more pernicious than the same crime in any other sort of men. So look, they're affecting trillions of dollars, billions of dollars. So their crimes are worse than one guy out here doing something, right? And there needs to be something more penal. So there's a guy in the group, Jeff. He talks about this. What are the consequences? What are we going to do? Who's going to pay a price when they break the Constitution and violate it? When they spend way beyond their budget? When they create these big deficits? When they're acting unconstitutionally? When they're creating unconstitutional agencies? What's the price? What are we going to do about that so that the precedents don't continue and they do more and more and more? If we don't have election integrity and we think it's off and we don't punish anyone, won't it get worse and worse and worse, right? It will, right? They'll do more and more. If there's a problem in the election and it's incorrect and there's fraud and no one's caught and put to jail and punished, they'll just do more and more and more. That is, that people are generally virtuous or corrupt as their magistrates are. So look, he's saying if you don't have virtuous magistrates, the people aren't going to be virtuous. There is something exceedingly solemn and important in the nature of this great trust. And according as it observed, I do think it denigrates Americans if your leaders are in your face, not following their own rules. People would say, why are we going to follow it? You're not following. And if they're acting really badly, as an example, some people may adopt that and do it. People of virtue may say that's out there. And when any one branch on it passes once off with impunity, and another will soon follow it. So dangerous a thing is an ill precedent. And that's what we don't want. We've set that many. So dangerous a thing is an ill precedent. So we don't want any branch of the government setting a bad precedent, acting unconstitutionally, right? We don't want the judicial, we don't want the legislature, we don't want the executive branch in any way breaking the Constitution. And we have gone way away from following the Constitution. So we need to restore that. And it's up to us, you, the states, to challenge them. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison challenged it. So dangerous a thing is an ill precedent. So when a judge writes law, that's a bad precedent. right? And the state shouldn't be following it. When the Supreme Court rules and writes a law, like maybe writing a tax in Obamacare, we shouldn't be following that because it's unconstitutional for a judge to write a law. Just like the president can't write a law. Who writes the laws? The legislature, the Congress. And so, depraved in the nature of man, that we justify ourselves and the wickedness by examples that cannot be justified. An action at first reckoned dishonest, by being practiced once or twice becomes unblameable. So you can't let these actions slide, or they'll get worse and worse and worse. An action at first reckoned dishonest, if it becomes continual, and the left knows this because they normalize, right? They normalize transgenderism, they normalize all these different climate change, is to control you. But if you let an agency act unconstitutionally, or let an unconstitutional agency be formed to begin with, it usually will get worse and worse. People don't normally give back up power in agency. So you've got to remedy that, correct it. An action at first reckoned dishonest, by being practiced once or twice becomes unblameable. So the more it goes on, people will just accept it, and they'll do more and more. So you have to call it out peacefully. As an extortion grows, used to be thought but a prerequisite. Thus, evil is mitigated, nay, canceled by repetition, right? You start having problems with elections over and over, and it can get worse. You start breaking the Constitution over and over by judges, and the judicial branch was supposed to be the least powerful. And look how powerful it is. Congress, presidency. Last reckoned sacred as a trust, a sufficient reason for providing by great and certain penalties that none be committed. Now listen. So you, the people, and the states need to call out peacefully unconstitutional acts and agencies and stand. And it's up to the states, right? Right now, Texas is up to them to fix their border. Washington, D.C. isn't. So it's up to the states also to call out the federal government, the Supreme Court, the Congress, the president, when they're acting unconstitutionally. If you don't call it out, no one's going to know it. You have to make the people aware. You, the people, have to make your friends aware when the Constitution's being broken, or you won't have it anymore. Incrementally, it will just disappear, and by large structural changes. We're unique as Americans. We have a unique and magnificent Constitution. Let's keep it. Don't let them incrementally destroy the Constitution, and don't let them do structural changes to destroy it. Send the right constitutional people to Washington and to your state house. You can have an impact and make a difference in your local community by taking over the elections there. You can have an impact in your local community by taking over the city council, running people for city council, school boards, and at least fighting for what you believe in there peacefully. And having that local territory be yours and then expand from. So you can have a large impact in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city council, in your school boards, and make that a basis of constitutional power for you to stand on. We have to defend the Constitution, or it won't be there for you. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you.